What's up guys, welcome to my item guide. This is the first video in a series geared towards newer players to make it easier for them to get into the game. I made this ugly ass graphic on your screen that shows you which items stack and which don't. Items on the right side stack and items on the left don't. An easy way to remember which items stack is, or a good rule of thumb is basically if the item has an active or an on hit effect, it usually doesn't stack. So if you're having issues remembering sometimes, just look if it has one of those two. Now, moving on, I want to go over items I feel like some people don't fully understand or might have a misconception about. I also want to go over some special case items that you might not want to combine until it's completely needed, like because you need room. So the first item I want to talk about is Ring of Life. Ring of Life is by itself is not a good item, but you want to not use this on anti-mage, or you don't want to use this on anti-mage cloaks right away, and you don't want to put this on any unit that you're going to keep for a while, because this item goes towards an Orb of Refresh. Orb of Refresh is way too strong of an item to pass up on. It can legit carry the entire game if used properly. So remember, keep this separate for at least a while, because you need that Orb of Refresh. Now, another honorable mention is Kira Axe. Kira Axe builds into 3 of the strongest utility items in the game: Heaven's Gift, Claw Wand, and Cloud Halberd. Before this mage meta, Heaven's Gift was easily the strongest one, and everyone usually used to rush it. Now though, after the nerf, and with mages being so prominent, I think having a Claw Wand for your carry is way more important. And then if you end up finding another Kira Axe, you can then make the Heaven's Gift. Another item I want to talk about is Broken Sword. This is the last one for this topic. Usually, people instantly combine 2 Broken Swords to make a Crystal Sword. The issue with that is that 2 Broken Swords give 20, each one gives 20 attack damage, which is 40. But when you combine it, it ends up going back to 20, just to give you a 1.5 damage crit for a 15% chance. Usually I think that's not worth it. I think it's better to keep the Broken Sword separate unless you need space on that unit, say you really need the space, then you would combine it. But until then, I would just keep it separated, and you'll probably do more damage than the crit itself. Now let's move on to items that I notice players have issues with. First one I want to talk about is Magic Staff. This item increases skill damage. Skill damage means any damage that comes from an ultimate that your unit casts. So things like Devastator Bomb, Swords and Spin, Dark Spirit Ult, all these things are skills. So that's who this item would go on. It does not work on passive abilities or summons. So units like Shadowcaller and Worm will not get any use out of it. So make sure to put it only on units with an actual skill, and one that preferably deals high damage and does AoE. So things like Tortola, Swordsman, Devastator, all these units are usually really good. There's a lot more examples, but the biggest thing is they have to have a skill that actually does damage. There's a few items that give plus skill damage: Mysterial Staff, Pulse Staff, Ice Armor, Voodoo Staff. These all stack except for Pulse Staff. Pulse Staff, the active ability doesn't stack, so you don't want to stack multiple Pulse Staffs on someone just for the skill damage. Now, another item that I notice people have issues with sometimes, or at least when they're first starting out, is Frantic Mask. This item gives you lifesteal, attack speed, and silences the hero. Silence means that units can't cast their ultimates anymore. So usually you only put this item on units that have passive abilities. For example, Shadowcrawler, Berserker, Source, and Agarsis Ranger are examples of units with a passive ability. But in this game, you don't need to combine them. So if you still want to place the components onto the same unit without silencing their ult, you could just put it on them. You don't have to combine it. But if you're going to combine it, this item is really good on units with passive abilities. It makes them way stronger, and because the components only give you 10% attack speed, the Frantic Mask itself gives 40, which is huge. So if you are using a comp with those specific passive ability units, put it on them. Now the next item I want to go over is Oblivion Staff. It's called the Feather Killing item, and for good reason. It gives you 50% chance that your auto attack won't be dodged. So if you put it on your carry that will survive, it'll help them shred a feathered comp. And then if you find a Ghost Blade, you can make it into a Monkey King Bar, which guarantees that they can't dodge your attacks. So if you put this on a sniper versus a strong feather team, he's going to destroy them. Now moving on, I want to talk about is Claw Wand. Claw Wand gives you 100% magic resist and makes you immune to skills, which makes no sense because you don't need magic resist if you're immune to skills. But anyways, you still want to put this on your strongest diver or carry. that's going to be this way they can't be damaged by skills, nor can they be crowd controlled for 8 seconds, giving them a lot of time to do a lot of damage. So the one thing though is that Siren actually goes through this item. She's like the only unit that can go through this item in CCU. So versus Siren, this item's not as useful, but still useful versus like everyone else. You put this in a Shadow Crawler 3 in an Assassin comp, and she'll destroy a Mage or a God Mage comp with ease, because she's not going to take any damage from them. Now, the next item on the list is Cloud Halberd. Cloud Halberd disarms the highest attack damage unit for 5 seconds. So if someone has if someone has like a stack Sniper 3, you can make this item to stop them from auto-attacking for 5 seconds, which is huge and can come in real clutch in a fight. So it's just an item to think about. It's not one I would rush, but it has its uses. So if you find extra cure axes, it's a good idea to make this item. Now, the next item on the list is Barbaric Cuirass. Some people call it Assault Cuirass. It increases armor and attack speed for allies 1 grid from the person that's wearing it, and it also decreases the same amount of attack speed and armor from your opponent's units that are 1 grid away. So this item is really strong and should be made whenever possible. So if you get a Wraith Shard, try to give it to a tank or like a frontliner that's going to be using this item. Unless you can make a Mjolnir, then arguably it's close. Mjolnir is probably better. But if you're not close to Mjolnir, give the Wraith Shard to someone that you're stacking armor on, so that they can get use out of this. Now, the next item I have on my list is actually Pulse Staff. Pulse Staff shoots a beam as the fight starts, and it hits the enemy for a good amount of damage. This item does not stack on one unit, so if you have multiple Pulse Staffs, place them on separate units for multiple units to get hit. The reason I mention this item is because if you're playing assassins, careful which assassin you give this to. It delays their jump in time. So if you put this on a Shining Assassin, she's going to jump in late, which is really bad for your team, because she's actually the tankiest assassin, and you need her distracting the enemies. Alright, now we talk about Pulse Staff, let's go to Axe of Fury. Axe of Fury is actually a very sick item, and even though it increases mana regeneration, it still should be used on a carry, regardless whether they even have a skill or not. Just remember, this item only works on melee units. It even says that at the end. When a melee unit auto attacks, 30% of that damage your unit did to the enemy will cleave as pure damage to enemies 2 grids next to it. Essentially, even if you give this to a Shadow Crawler who does not have a skill, she will be cleaving for huge amounts of damage, so it's always worth it. Or like if you're playing gods, if you give this to like a Sand King, he's just gonna, not only will he do sick damage, he's gonna get a lot of mana really fast from the cleave, and he's just gonna be just all over the place. Like this item is really good, but just make sure it's on a melee unit. Now, the next item I want to talk about is Orb Refresh. Orb Refresh resets your cooldown on an ability. So, to name a few units this is good on is Siren, Razor Claw, Storm Shaman. There's obviously more, but those are like the most prominent ones you'll see a Orb Refresh on. One thing is, do not put this on a Devastator. His ult usually gets off cooldown by the time his first bomb explodes, so he's not going to make too much use out of this item. So like, put it more on like CC units, or units that have damage plus CC. You know, that's why I said Storm Shaman, Siren, stuff like that. Like, this item can carry games. Like, try to get this item whenever you can. Now, the last 2 items I want to talk about are actually Mjolnir. Mjolnir basically gives you a small % chance to do an AoE lightning looking attack that hits multiple units. That's all it basically does. So like when it says up to most 5 pieces, that means if there's 5 pieces alive, it'll hit up to 5 pieces for that magical damage. Maelstrom does the same thing, just at a lower damage and less enemies hit. And then the last item on this list is Scythe of Vise. This item gives you skill damage and mana regeneration, but the most important part is that when the fight starts, it's just like Shaman Synergy, it will penguin one of the units on the enemy team, so it gives you a huge advantage right away. So pretty much I think that's all the items people usually have issues with. If I missed any of them that still confuse you, just let me know in the comments below, and I'll try to help you out to understand what it does. Also, if you guys have any ideas and guides that relate to these items, I can do it at any point, so just let me know also in the comments. But yeah, that's about it for this video. Sub or like the video if this helped you out. This is my first video in the series of guides, so expect one tomorrow about economy, but I'm going to be making one on pretty much most topics that players usually have trouble with. You know, I'm gonna make one about streaking, about economy. There's other ones that are in the works. I just can't think of the top of my head right now. So I'll see you guys in the next video tomorrow, and yeah, catch you guys later.